hopefully my new computer is going to work okay after the other one completely broke down. But welcome anyway. I think we're on lesson number 4 this week, so that's brilliant. We've been looking at the seed heads. We looked at an artist last week called Helen Gottlieb, who uses printmaking to make these beautiful detailed drawings or prints of foliage, flowers and things, and uses brown in the background, like a yellowy brown, and then some white to highlight different features. So having thought through and had a go at that last week, I thought it'd be really nice to look at some different artists, but also to take this idea that Helen had with these browns and yellows and whites and so forth. And she does use some metallics in her work as well, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, but to take that idea and use it as an underpainting for what we're going to do next. So I was a little bit inspired by the Dutch artists who, I think it was the 1650s, they used to work on, or the 17th century, they used to work on, they used to paint a lot of tulip pictures back in the day. Tulips were really, really expensive, and there was a bit of a what's called a Tulip Mania in those days. And this is where all these wonderful tulips were created and sold. And we take them for granted these days, but back in the day, they had a lot of significance to people in Holland. So we're going to go over to the wall and have a look at what we're going to do there, and I'll explain my idea, which is a little bit unusual, but it's also a lot of fun, and it's going to help us with our drawing skills as well as composition. So let's have a look over on the art wall. So I've brought out quite a number of different pictures from these artists today. So one of the characteristics of the art for me that stood out to me the most, and this was a bit of a trend in photography a couple of years ago, was using photography to take pictures just like these. So a few of the things about this is there's lots of different characteristics to these sorts of paintings from the Dutch Golden Age, as they called it. Some of the characteristics were that the paintings were really what's called hyper-realistic, which is something we hear of in today's art world, where artists are painting super detailed pictures of portraits and sometimes still lives and stuff as well. And then we have the scientific accuracy. So many of these paintings were used as botanical records as well, and there were lots of records of rare and exotic tulips as well. The other thing about them, which I kind of alluded to a minute ago, is there was a lot of symbolism associated with them. So they often symbolized wealth, transience, and the fragility of human life as well. And then, as I mentioned, the dark backgrounds, which you could call a chiaroscuro technique, because you've got really light areas and very dark contrasts, hence the dark backgrounds in there as well. So they looked natural. These bouquets they look natural, but they're often not the sort of thing you can actually create in real life. Especially back in those days, because the flowers often bloomed in different seasons as well. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about any specific artists, although I've got a list of a few here which I can't pronounce anyway. But I can talk a bit about that perhaps in the next few lessons as well. So one other little thing, I suppose, which is nice to hear, is that Tulip Mania, as I mentioned, was something that was going on in around the 1630s, and tulips were really highly sought after, and some rare bulbs sold for more than the price of a house, which is incredible. a bulb. Something that we take for granted these days. There was a cultural obsession this was a cultural obsession that influenced still life painters who immortalized these blooms in their work. Today, Dutch Master Tulip paintings remain highly regarded in art history and inspire contemporary floral artists and designers as well, which is why I mentioned the photography. So I really like these because they've got this lovely depth to them. They're really attractive and draw your attention because of this high contrast, and this is something that I really enjoy looking at as well. So I thought, let's have a look at some of this stuff. So I've got quite a number of them here, which I've just sort of thrown on the screen for you to have a quick look at. I will also make these available on the drive so you can see them. There's another little sort of bouquet one down here, like that, in a nice vase. And then we've got this one, which I thought was quite interesting because the vase looks far too small for the flowers, and the flowers seem to get larger as they come up to the top there. So, and I'm not sure if that's, I'm assuming that's just to sort of draw attention to the blooms themselves a little bit more. So a little bit of artistic sort of playing around with the composition a little bit there. Now, these are the ones that, I think these might be a bit more contemporary, these ones, but these ones drew my attention because we've got, in the picture, we've got this frame around the outside, which implies that they're kind of being preserved inside of a box. Now, as far as art goes and our lessons go, it's quite an interesting thing to do because by isolating the picture, the flowers inside of the box, it forces us to look at the shapes perhaps a bit more around the flowers themselves. So, and you'll have heard me mention this before, the negative shapes are really important as well when drawing anything. So I thought that was quite an interesting idea for us to try out. Here's another one. Let me just unlock it. Is it unlocked? No. I get so many pictures sometimes I can't see what pictures I've got hold of. There we go. So this one, very similar, but much more of a decorative edge around there. You've got butterflies and various things in there as well, different plants. And then this is my kind of thing that I thought would be a really nice thing for us to try out. So I'm just going to get rid of oh gosh, hang on, I'm putting them back on again. There we go. Got more pictures than I need. I'll leave that one on and move it over a little bit. There we go. Right. Let's see if we can move it over. Grab all of it now. There it is. Right. Move that one over there, make it slightly smaller, and we'll go up here and grab the two photographs I just made a few minutes ago. So in the email, I asked if you could bring a box to create your own small composition. So this is a nice way for you to sort of look at how things are arranged in a more of a controlled way, for you then to be able to do some drawing. Now you'll notice on the left hand side it's just the tulips, but I thought I've got all of these things I've been collecting, so I'm going to put some of those in there as well. And if you remember me saying a few minutes ago, a lot of these artworks didn't necessarily make sense or were impossible because some of the flowers weren't in season that they put into the composition as well. So we can put some different things in here in that tradition that goes with the Dutch painters that we've been just talking about now. All right, so I'm going to take us over to the desk. I'm going to show you what I finished up doing with the Helen Gottlieb work. And then I'll show you my box and what we're going to do. Okay, let's go over to the desk. Here we go. So on my desk, let's see if I can zoom out a little bit. There we go. So last week I was drawing, inspired by this artist here. I have done the video, it is online, but at the moment I need to put it onto the website. So that will be on this because of the delay with the computers. So Helen Gottlieb's work was like this that we looked at last week. And we had these yellowy brown, sort of yellow ochre painted across the whole sheet, then the drawing, and then using highlights and biro pen to bring out the shadows, the darker areas. So we've got this really nice contrast that we can use in the painting. Now, the other thing she does is she does use gold leaf. And I said last week, I can't afford to buy everyone gold leaf to try it out, but yeah, I got some gold leaf. No, I didn't get any gold leaf. I got some paint. So this is something, the paint is something I've had for years and I've never used. And I thought, right, I am going to use some of this gold paint that I've got. So it's from the Dahlia and Rowney graduate acrylic set. And it's... So we've got, it's not actually gold, it's not called gold, it's called metallic yellow. And there's other ones which I call bronze, which is metallic brown. And then there's other ones like a blue and a green and things like that. But it was quite nice to experiment, and you can see the reflective qualities in there. So as you might be aware now, you can paint with acrylics and then... Oh, sorry. And then what you can do is you can draw back over the top, which I've done here. So I've worked into this a lot more since last week. Now, the idea then is that we do these box drawings, but then what we do is we create the same sort of thing we've got here, but then we're going to paint over the top. So we're going to use this sort of thing as an underpainting to then work back over the top of. Okay, so here is, oh, there's Sasha, another one turning up. There we go. So I got this box, which has been in one of my, because we also got a new sideboard. So so I pulled this out. I found this in the sideboard, as you do, you know, loads of stuff you've forgotten about. And I got this box. It's quite a deep one, so I built it up a bit with some cardboard and things. And then I went out and bought some tulips today. So you can start arranging the composition of your tulips and so forth in the box. Obviously, it's not particularly crowded in there. I could put a few more in. So I've got another one over here. So all I've done is snip it off. And then, see, I don't necessarily want them all at the top. So I'm going to snip it down a bit more, perhaps. And arrange. I'm not really a flower arranger like Sheila, but I'm just going to have a bit of fun with it. And then, as you saw on the photographs, I've got these as well, poppy seed heads, and this teasel with all this fluffy stuff on it. Like that. Oh yeah, and I've got one of these as well. So now, so you can arrange your own stuff and your tulips together like this if you want to. I may change that in a minute. So now we've got a subject matter that we can draw from. I've got my 4 tulips. I quite like that now, actually. Got my 4 tulips, and I've got my I don't know what you call that. Got my seed heads and my teasels and stuff like that. Now, it might be a bit difficult to prop it up. I should be able to just about prop that up enough to draw it. But alternatively, you can do what I did, which is take a photograph of it as well, so you can get the composition. All right. Now, obviously then, the next thing to do is start to draw it out. Now, what you can do, and this is a really nice way of just seeing how you can measure things, either by sight or just with a pencil. But if you take this here as one measurement, and then down the side of the box, we take that one measurement there, put your finger there, and you've got what, 1 2/3 or something of that. So you can work out by drawing this frame, calling it a frame now. If I start there, I take that. Now this is pretty similar to the size of the box here, but it might not be, it might be bigger. Okay, so we take that measurement there. So I'm just going to draw 2 lines either side. It could be any size line you want. And then turn it that way, mark, and then take it again, on it about 2/3. So the proportions of my box, and I'll show this again to you if you're a bit thinking, oh, what is this all about? I'll show it to you again. But look, that's the kind of size of my composition there. I think I could probably go a little bit wider. That's right. Just looking at it on the screen here. Okay, so we've got the shape of the box. Now, if you want to use a ruler and all this sort of stuff, you can do that as well. I'm just doing this, as you can see, by sight and with nice loose lines. Best way to draw anything. Well, I enjoy drawing things freehand because you can do it very roughly and you can make mistakes and then you can go back and correct them easily if you do it lightly. So I've got my kind of box shape, if you like, here. Now, because I'm drawing this on the screen with you at the moment, so what I'm going to do is probably stand up, do it so I can see it from above. So I'm just going to turn all the volume down on all my things here. Right. Okay. So once you've finished the drawing, you can start with the painting like we did last week with Helen Gottlieb's work. So now I'm going to very loosely start to work out where the tulip heads are going to go. There is a little bit of perspective in this, in that I can see the inside of the box, so I'm going to put that in. Depends where you're standing or where you're looking from. So don't forget that if you move slightly, doesn't mean you've got to freeze, but if you move slightly, you will find that things look slightly different from a very slightly different angle. So just be aware of that when you're working. Now, the thing that I mentioned before is to look out for the negative shapes. So I'm kind of used to doing that, but when you're drawing things in a frame like this, then it's important to look around the outside of the object as well. So these shapes that are in the background are just as important, really, as the subject themselves. So, and don't forget, if you're looking at this and thinking, well, I'm not sure James got that right there, the camera is at a slightly different angle to me as well. But the nice thing about objects such as this is that these are asymmetrical objects. They're not symmetrical or geometrical as such. So you can play around with it a little bit. And I've got my next one just over here. I don't know if you can see that yet. See what's going on in a few minutes, I guess, when I've drawn a bit more. So I've got a rough sort of idea now of where things are going to go. This top tulip here goes right up to the edge of the box. So I've drawn it right onto the side bit, which is here, or the wall of the box. Okay, so that's your first thing that I would like you to do, or to explore today, is creating a composition within frame. So I'm saying frame because I already know that somebody hasn't managed to find a box, which is fine. So you could use a photo frame, or you could cut some card to make a frame and then put the objects inside of it, which could be quite interesting actually, because the objects are obviously not always going to be inside of the frame itself, they're going to come out of it. I've got that a little bit here with this thing. So that could be quite interesting as well. Now, when you've done this, make sure that your lines are clear enough, dark enough, so that you're able to see picture itself when you've put paint on, because we're going to use some yellow ochre over the top. So not pure yellow ochre, use yellow ochre that's been watered down quite a bit, so that you've got a sort of a tint of colour on there, and not like you're not putting an opaque layer over the top, or one that completely obliterates all of your drawing. Okay, so that's the first thing to do, and then after that, yellow ochre, and then we're going to get the biro pens and work back over the top to add the tone and shadow, very much like we did last week with this. And then we'll start adding colour. So we'll darken everything down in the background, we'll lighten and create highlights on the objects themselves to create that Dutch, hopefully, some of that chiaroscuro effect with the strong highlights and the dark shadows in there. The main thing at the moment is let's have a go at doing some drawing and looking at those negative shapes in the background. So take your time with it, but to begin with, start nice. I got a bit of that. Start nice and loosely as well, so that you can get a feel for where the shapes are, both the background and the tulips, and then start to work into it with a bit more detail, which is what I'm going to do in just a few seconds. Okay, so I hope that makes sense to everybody, and it's something a bit different, but it reminds me actually of an artist called Corneille, I think his name is, and he created all these amazing assemblages or assemblage. So he would collect objects and create a composition within the inside of a box. So it's you're creating an assemblage of natural form inside a frame. So we're taking lots of inspiration from a few different places there. All right. So I hope everyone's happy with that. If you want to ask questions, you can ask questions at any time. Is everybody okay with? So here we go, drawing away with the details and so forth. This is the bit that I enjoy a lot, because I get to put in some more definite shapes as I draw just the outlines basically of what we're looking at here, but a little bit more specifically, keeping my eye on everything that's inside of the box continuously as well. And then I'll start adding in some of the details inside of the objects, such as the tulips and the teasel and the seed head and all those lovely things as well, before adding a wash of colour over the top, just like the Helen Gottlieb work that we looked at last week. So we're using the idea of Helen Gottlieb as an underpainting for our picture. And we've got the structure of the box there, so you can see the box is I'm looking at it from an angle, so I've actually drawn that angle there, so you can see the size of the box to the right hand side but not to the left so much. And then I think this is me preparing the wash that's going to go over the top, and you'll see a slight pause after I've done that as well. Whilst the paint dries, which doesn't take more than a few minutes for me to then be ready to start working over the top. So I'm just propping up the box there so I can see it at a slightly different angle and to give me a bit more room while I'm working. Obviously the angle of the box has now changed, but I've got all the shapes, and therefore I just need the details of what I'm looking at right in front of me just there. And I was just talking about the paints that I use. So I use the Systems 3 paint and the Dahlia and Rowney set of 48 colours. They're only small tubes. I think it's 75mm. I can't quite remember offhand. Hang on, let me just have a look. Yeah, they're very small tubes. 22mm tubes. You can get a set of 48 colours in there. That's the whole range, I think. And just then I was just showing you actually that when we're putting in the black and white, you can maybe take a photo on your phone, because you can see all the highlights and shadows of the objects very clearly. By using the filters on your phone, you can very quickly get a black and white image and see where those highlights and shadows are without the distraction of colour. So one of the things about using a pen is I just love the mark making techniques. The lines, the overlapping lines, the cross hatching, the scribbling, the dots, to make up the texture. And then in a short while you'll see me start to apply the paint. Just seeing if I can get in a little bit closer so you can see the mark making that I'm doing just here. See, I've built up some of the lines. I've left some areas empty on purpose as well. Now at somewhere around this point I start to work in a little bit more with some colour paints rather than just the white. It's a little bit earlier than perhaps I would have done normally if I was doing this, but I wanted everyone just to see how I do that. So with the white paint and the pen, I was applying the white pen, and then applying the white paint and then going back. So it's a bit of a backwards and forwards thing. It's not necessarily apply the white paint then the pen. You can do it any way around that you want to. And the same goes with applying the colours here. Now I wanted that effect as well of the dark background, just like in the Dutch paintings. So I started to use, I think it was indigo, and I can't remember what green paint I used, but I used a green paint in there, mixed together, to start building up some of that deep shadow in the background. And I would also be painting the white outline of the box as well, eventually. I'm using more of a bluey green in the leaves than you can see on the photo as well. But very shortly after this, I come to the end of the lesson. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this evening. We're going to carry on with this next week. I'll be working on a slightly larger version. So I shall see you for lesson number 5. Have a fantastic week.